Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. I have a number of questions. I guess the first being, there's been a lot of discussion that not enough money has been appropriated for these cameras, and I guess the first one would be that it appears that in House Bill 206 we gave full spending authority to our local schools to spend their money however they need to, right? And so can they not use other monies other than the ones specifically appropriated for this task to accomplish this legislative mandate?
Well, I think it specifically references the Safe School Fund and, that funding. And we did have a lot of discussions around some of the other pots of money, like special education and our federal money. We do not believe that those line items could be used to purchase cameras for the classroom.
Okay, so it's the position of the department that when in House Bill 206 we granted the ability to, we have the school aid funding formula, and we granted the ability to not have those funds restricted and to use those at the discretion of the county boards of education, that by establishing this school school safety fund, that it restricted any other funds from being utilized for this purpose?
I'm not saying it restricted the, I was referring to the federal funds that many people have asked about spending for this,
Okay.
and they can't do the federal. Now,
what about
they
state
are able
funds?
to spend their state funds however they choose to spend their state funds.
And they are mandated by the legislature to spend funds for this purpose, right?
I think the only catchy point that some of our counties have looked at, it says upon appropriation in the legislation, and I think that's what they're looking at, as they don't have to add other funds that they have for other purposes into that. Checking with Sarah.
Are the funds in the school aid funding formula an appropriation?
Yes.
Yep. The next question then that I would have is this. There was discussion in the Joint Committee on Finance last legislative interims that it was the position of the Department of Education that in each individual classroom that there would need to be a self-contained camera system. Is that the position of the department?
No, we've looked at multiple ways to do that. There was some discussion that if you had a self-contained system in a classroom, it might be cheaper because you wouldn't be running wiring through the building to a secure location, maybe in the principal's office. But we don't have a position on, a particular kind, whether it's self-contained or anything like that.
Does the department have any position on the utilization of Internet protocol cameras within the internal networks, or perhaps on a subnet that would be buried away from the rest of the school's network, but utilizing the same wiring?
No, as long as it's separate from the school's network, because then it get into the federal E-rate, that it can't be run on the same. But as long as it's plugged into a separate, I believe as Tim says, the server, a separate.
Could you come up?
Separate switch, but the wiring and things could be.
So E-rate only requires a separate switch.
Yes.
And most Internet protocol cameras utilize power over Ethernet, right? Sir, could you just come up to the podium?
Come on up and swear in.
Welcome, and thank you for being assistants here. Can you state your name, please?
Tim Conzett.
Tim Contet?
Conzett, C-O-N-Z-E-T-T.
Conzett. Okay, thank you. I'm Senator Eric Tarr. Nice to meet you, Mr.
Nice
Conzett.
to meet you, sir.
We need to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We're going to get into some technical questions here, right? But power over Ethernet generally requires its own switch, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so in order to utilize that, you know the average cost of an 8-port power over Ethernet switch?
Just in some rough numbers that I put together when we were asked about this for the fiscal note, I priced $500 because of fiber capability. It was just, I mean, that's.
Why would it
I
require
figured
fiber?
It wouldn't necessarily require fiber. It was just something out there to ensure good connectivity.
Okay. You know, I mean, because Ethernet Cat 6 is certainly capable of gigabit
Sure.
speeds, right? So would you agree that a typical 8-port power over Ethernet or even 16-port would generally be less than $500?
Very good possibility, yes. In trying to adhere to more of the technology standards that we implement in the schools, you know, to ensure uptime and so forth. I mean, to walk into a big box and pick up an 8-port switch and stick it in, you know, those kinds of things. The pricing there would be slightly different than what you would get from a normal technology purchase that would fit the quality or the standard that we would like to have in the schools.
Okay. And I guess my next question is, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the cost of the 90 days of storage.
Right.
Let's say that you needed 4 cameras per classroom with a viewing angle of 120 degrees. And let's say that you had a school with, let's just do it on a single classroom, but obviously this would scale less expensively for one with more.
Right.
What quality of video are you guys saying would be necessary? 1080p, 4K, 720p?
Yeah, well, and that becomes the issue, and the issue is the synchronization with the audio. So it gets into what your requirements are downstream. So average video is at 30 frames per second. With slow motion replay, they push more towards 60 frames per second. And so with a bit rate of 48 for sampling size on the audio, when you sync those together, it creates the larger file size. And I'm not a video expert. This is information that I have gathered as best I can in trying to respond to these questions and trying to give the best information that I can.
Yeah. So I guess here's my concern, right? Okay. We have, and I've got to go quickly. We have internal networks that are already in place at these schools,
Sure.
which can be the wiring for which can
Sure.
be utilized, right? We have switches that can be utilized in order to do this that cost less than $500. We have cameras that obviously would cost less than $500. We have storage, which would be significantly less expensive. I can find 10 terabyte drives right now less than $200. Right? And so the question is, how in the world did we come to a $5,000 per classroom, or rather, how did we come to the fact that $5,000 per school would not get this done?
I think that $5,000 per school, in the numbers that I have come up with, and there's been a recent product that's been released that's between $1,500 and $2,000, and it is a self-contained camera that is IP controlled, and this is just all new over the last 30 days in trying to find this information. It gets into the multiple camera situation. That really is $5,000 per school. If you have multiple rooms, you know, it's depending on the setup at the school. $5,000 seems to be a lot of money, yes, but making sure that we have the quality video and the storage capability and whatever, depending on the software cost that would do for the obscuring of the other individuals. And it could be, it was an estimation based on the information. It could be less expensive to outfit this.
At this point, have we tried?
I am, in my role, I have not been a part of that process, and school systems have been looking into information.
I'm going to have to call the meeting here. We've had the bell ring here several minutes ago, so I'm going to have to end it for now. We may be able to take this up at a later date, so I'm going to look for a motion from the senator from Preston
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.